Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the More Than Made podcast. My name is Jake Langdon.
And I'm Alan Langdon.
And we are back again, a very eventful late night for you East Coasters out there. Obviously, produced some good racing, but a lot of fans were not able to stay up. So we'll have to give you a little bit more recap than usual, but of course, get in there. Newgarden, of course, bringing home the win. And then on top of that, we have some more news. Christian Rasmussen signing an extension and then obviously putting it in the podium right after that. And some other officiating notes. And, of course, a preview of the XPEL Grand Prix of Road America coming up in 2 weeks. So hopping right in, the big storyline heading into the race itself was, of course, Alex Palou, fourth pole in the Rowe, which has been more than the rest of the field. How many poles? We've had 7 races.
Did I do the math wrong on that? I think it should be like 4 and 3 or be 5 and 4.
Yeah, how many races are we in, man? We're losing track.
I saw the results here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This was our 9th race completed, so you're wrong there. He's got 4 out of 9. Anyway, Alex Palou making history, becoming the second guy since reunification to have 4 poles in a row. Will Power had 4 poles back in 2011 between St. Petersburg and Sao Paulo. Before that, you get into some, Sebastian Bourdais Champ Car beatdown in 2006. Elio had 4 back in 2004. Sebastian did it again in 2004. Montoya in 2004, and then we talk about people that have actually done it more than 4 times. You have to go all the way back to 1988 with Danny Sullivan. He did it 5 times. Mario Andretti in 84 did it 5 times. Zanardi in 96 did it 6 times. So I guess he would be the most recent, more than 4. And then Mario Andretti did it 7 times across 2 seasons from 65 to 66. And Bobby Unser holds the record for 8 consecutive poles between Trenton in 1971 and Pocono in 1972. So he's with Elite Company. And like I said, doing this, being the second guy to do this since reunification when the racing has been, inarguably the most competitive. I don't think most people would argue like it's ever been. This guy is obviously he's finding new, I think we said it after the 500 that he'd completed IndyCar, but he's finding new ways to complete IndyCar and he's coming up with all sorts of records to beat. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's actually pretty unbelievable like that you have a guy that has the driving maturity, control, and fuel saving of Scott Dixon, and then pairs it with the clinical, meticulous, qualifying ability of Will Power and does it as a singular driver. It's pretty incredible to watch live. Yeah,
he's pretty much Will Power and Scott Dixon combined. I think we've settled it, and I don't think anyone at this point would
two other
deny
best drivers in the series right now. So, yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, so anyway, of course, Elite Company, he was over a mile per hour faster than everybody else. And despite, the races we'll get into, not necessarily having the result he hoped for, I still think everyone was just in awe of how well he was able to put this car together. And anyway, getting to the race itself, pretty eventful day. Starting off pretty interesting start. No real incidents until the first...
lap 55-ish. So that was
yeah.
So this is when Palou being put, as you imagine, with the car that's a mile per hour faster, had a pretty early start and was doing quite swimmingly. I think over a 2-second gap, and then came out of nowhere, but none other than Stingray Robb in the lap traffic there was really able to hold him up for some reason or another, which really allowed Ericsson and the other team to kind of catch up and close that gap and make moves through lap traffic. This resulted in Palou dropping a few spots and getting tussled up with some of the lap traffic in the name of Nolan Siegel. Unfortunately, Palou's on the inside, Siegel on the outside, and one could argue that Palou kind of jutted out a little bit and didn't give Siegel a whole lot of room, but unfortunately, man, just a little too high on that outside line, got bumped and spun right into the wall. I think it's his front toe link may have actually snapped because of the contact prior to the wall. So I think he had no chance regardless.
Well, if one can argue, what would you argue then?
I think if you were playing like sensitive rulings, you could make a case, but I think if you compare it to like Detroit last week, there are far more egregious examples. I think with this, it's unique because it's Alex Palou, so you're always going to try to like either play favorites or put him on a higher scrutiny because he doesn't usually get into these sort of tussles. But this is the second time now in a short oval he's been kind of caught in the middle of this mess. So it's clearly something that's kind of one of the few players that may frazzle him a little bit from his usual perfection.
I mean, I think it was just a racing incident. I would not have called a penalty under any circumstances. Like, I understand that he was the one that survived and Siegel didn't. But at the end of the day, I mean, he had passed Siegel by about 90% at that point, and Siegel obviously, Palou did not, he did not have to clip him like that necessarily. Maybe, obviously, I don't think any of it was intentional, but it wasn't a scenario where I felt like he was not right to take the place and try to get into the racing line. So anyway, yeah, that kind of knocked Siegel out. He was obviously a little upset. Felt like that he kind of got turned in on, which, and like I said, it was very close. I wouldn't be happy if I were him, but at the end of the day,
I think too, like Palou could have gotten like it wasn't an unnatural line, but for being the inside lane, could have cut that a lot tighter towards the line than where he was kind of the no man's land in terms of giving Siegel no real spot to do the outside lane unless he really went into the marbles. Yeah,
but as you mentioned before with Stingray, the moving chicane there was able to slow him Palou enough down to get passed by none other than Marcus Ericsson before the end of the first stint. So that was actually before they all came out pitted around 50 to 53. And then that's when the incident happened with Siegel, who was getting lapped, which is a whole nother issue. But Marcus Ericsson, who was my underdog pick, really came to play again after a strong performance last year and was able to maintain the lead for a large portion of the race, led 114 laps. I felt like he deserved to win. Obviously, him and Newgarden both had very, very good cars, and Newgarden was just the better driver on the day. But it's just good to see Marcus up front again. I mean, it's been so long since he's really even had a chance to win a race, especially since he's been on Andretti.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a quiet year for Marcus, and it's been a quiet year for Andretti for the most part on these ovals. And that was one of the biggest surprises, shockers, was to have all three of the Andrettis fairly competitive on a short oval, which is not, I would say, their bread and butter. I think street circuits are certainly their best case, and then maybe roads. But it was really interesting to see, like, Ericsson very much having one of the best cars, if not the best car of the day.
Yeah, so Ericsson pretty much dominated from then until we got our first red flag for conditions. And that actually came just right before or right after Graham Rahal lost hold of his car in turn 4. And that actually that yellow ended up leading to the red flag. And pretty unfortunate move there for Rahal. He pretty much said on his interview, he stayed too long in his tires and got a little inside and the car caught it. I mean, the replay, it looks so slight. It's like one of those things you're like, damn, these guys are really, on the end of those stints, are really on the ragged edge. And unfortunate for him, had a good qualifying, was hanging around, and now falls to 11th in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, after such a good front half of the season in terms of multiple podiums and really punching above his weight for that RLL team, it is a bummer to see what was already a pretty crappy day for RLO. I mean, Foster was a back marker.
There was something. There was clearly something wrong with his car.
It was multiple miles off pace. So, like, that sucked. Mick Schumacher didn't have much pace either. So, like, the RLL team as a whole were just tractors on that course. That was a bummer. I think on top of that, it's also just shows, like, how impressive it is to see guys like Rasmussen and Palou make ridiculous saves. Palou did one in quals and Rasmussen did one during the race, where it's like these guys are getting even more tailspin and wickedness than like a Rahal did there, but are just able to make some crazy corrections and survive it. But it doesn't take much to completely lose control of the car. So I think it both to your point, shows how on edge they are with these tires, but also too like how impressive it is to have these younger guys recover from those moves when it is so sensitive.
Yeah, but Ray Hall was the only one to wreck on his own accord the whole weekend. I thought the guys kept it very clean. And
With the exception, I think, VK in practice. But
oh, yeah, you're right.
That was a soft,
you're right,
that was a soft hit.
You're right. So they're 2 wrecks there. But yeah, I thought that it was an impressive weekend. I mean, that Rasmussen save was crazy. I mean, they're talking about once you're like 90 degrees, you're in trouble. He was here. I mean, he was literally like 180, maybe even more, and then was able to get it back around. Him and O'Ward are the 2 best at that, and they showed it again. I mean, it feels like every time Rasmussen has one of these results, he has to do something crazy to get there, and that was another one of those days. I mean, what did you think of his day overall?
Rasmussen, I think it was fine. I mean, he definitely didn't qualify super well, so I think there were some nerves to see it. And then you add the background noise of him, we talked about this last week, being second to bottom in points, looking at a contract year, and ended up getting that contract extension right before this race, and certainly had some pressure to deliver and earn that contract a bit. So it's good to see him do it and do it cleanly. I think we'll get to it in a second here, but his battle with Newgarden was sketch at the very least, and it's showing some maturity finally that he's not ending up in a wall or taking another car out with him like he did in Phoenix. So
yeah, I mean, obviously getting better, and this is why they kept him. And we were talking about that last week, that it would be a shame for him to leave because of simply something like that. And he shows just, everyone who was worried about him staying to eat their words. So yeah. Anyway, the only other major incidents were, of course, the engine on Caio Collet failing, which was a very emotional moment for him as someone who's in the same position as Rasmussen, at least coming into the week, where he was on a contract. He's on a contract year. He's fighting for leader's circle, and he's been struggling for pace, and he looked amazing, really like a savvy youngster, kind of like Rasmussen has. And yeah, it's just another I mean, I had completely out of his control. His engine blew, and then on top of that, yeah, I just, it's a shame. I mean, the kid has shown a lot of heart this year. I think that he continues to show that he definitely has a place in this sport, but with how tight free agency is right now, there's no guarantees.
No, I mean, he's certainly, with this and the 500, shown a lot of prowess on ovals, which one could argue that market's a little bit saturated with Malukas, Rasmussen, and Newgarden, but nonetheless, it's still a valuable asset to have on any team because there is a healthy amount of ovals, including the big one. So, yeah, I think the season's not over yet, but despite the numbers and Mick Schumacher, I'd argue this is one of the deepest fields and probably a good rookie matchup. Both Caio and Hauger have had impressive moments, both from a skill standpoint, from having good cars, and potential to make good finishing standings as well. So I've really been impressed this mid-season so far is how competitive the drivers' skills have been, although they've just been riddled with bad luck and mechanical boogeymen to really hurt them on the points overall.
Yeah, I know this class is cursed. I mean, Hauger didn't even start. I don't know what the issue was there, but outside of Stingray, I mean, this is really a world-class level of driving. Like, I've been so impressed by the quality out there. The fact that anybody can put it in the top 10 on a given weekend, whether it's different strategy, just pure pace, whatever, it really makes for some great racing. It makes you earn every point. I mean, you see guys like, Rossi finishing down in 18th. You have Rosenquist, Indy 500 winner, finishing all the way in 14th. Like, these guys are guys that are winning races at times and have really had, like, you get beat up if you're not on your A game, and that's obviously been the case for guys like Collet, Schumacher, and Hauger this year.
Yeah, and I think it's been a rise of mechanical boogeymen. But kind of moving on through the race, so part of the chaos and what really made the strategy interesting here was the multiple rain delays. So if this sounds eerily familiar to the 500, it kind of was, where it had an early start because of rain and you kind of knew it was on the forecast. But similar to the 500, most of the rain that did appear was light sprinkles, which unfortunately any sort of sprinkle is enough to stop the cars, but not enough to make long-standing delays. As you mentioned, those of us in the East Coast, like myself, it was not an early night by any means. With a 9 o'clock start and close to a midnight finish, the rain delays definitely extended that a bit. But what that left was Ericsson leading and kind of chilling, and with that second red flag, with the possibility of it was a fully ended race, kind of like the 500, where once you get past that halfway mark, they can call the race if there's enough rain. That being said, they didn't, and I think it was for the better in terms of the strategy. The nice thing about this track is that it's already under the lights, so you can run it theoretically anytime during the night, and with little difference. But similar to the 500, I think that created a nice amount of tension and drivers being a bit more aggressive with the looming threat of rain.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really where the race, I thought, was pretty unique. I mean, the fact that Dixon and Palou, they got really screwed by the rain there, and the fact that they take so long to open the pits, which I do find, like, why do we need to do 3 laps before we go to the pit lane? Why don't we do 2? Like, I've always found that kind of strange with the yellow flags. Like, why do you have to close the pits for this long before you get it? Is it like they want you to go to the pits like in the middle of the expected yellow? Like, I've never really fully understood that, because, you know, Dixon had to come in for emergency service, which led to him having to take a drive-through penalty and go to the back, whereas Palou risked it, and he ended up literally, like, if it would have been one last lap, he would have been fine, and instead he
less than that, bro. If he was any other pit stall,
I know, if the pit stall was on the other side of the track.
The one time in the world that pit stall number 1, or the closest to the exit of pit lane, was a disadvantage, it was this example. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned, so for pit lane, they have like a registered speed limit. I think it's like 55 or something.
60.
Which is crazy to think. Like, yeah, it's like, it's highway speeds, but that's their slowest they can drive theoretically. But in that regard, you just saw Palou being even a tad bit slower than that, just trying to save whatever fuel he had, basically just running on neutral, and cars having to navigate themselves around him because they too wanted to, again, the speed limit's 60. If they're going 50, they want to go higher and get into their pit stalls fast enough. But yeah, I mean, Palou just coasted into his pit stall, which was the very end of a long pit lane, which was just tough. And I mentioned in the broadcast, but with these cars, if it runs out of fuel, like all the way down to fumes, it's really hard to get those fuel lines repressured, the car back up to heat and speed, and you got to restart it. So it took him a solid couple laps to get back refired and going, which, again, you mentioned it's a bit ironic because Dixon decided to take the hit with the emergency penalty and ended up better off than Palou did, because at that point the back of the field was anyone in the lead lap, so he ended like 15th versus Palou ended up like 20th. So interesting there, and a rare Ganassi strategy misstep. That wasn't it wasn't as important, but Simpson earlier on.
I don't blame them, because the rain came out. They weren't planning on the second rain delay necessarily coming in the middle. Like, I think they were going to pit within 3 laps of when the yellow came out for the rain, and instead they had to stop and restart again. To me, yeah, I mean, it's a misstep, but to me, it's like they were planning on running a stint. They were trying to stretch out their stint. I knew that they weren't going to be able to get the 5-stopper in necessarily, but they were just trying to be on freshest tires possible to end the race. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's a misstep, but to me, I think it was in the right. I don't blame. Like, I don't feel like it was. I don't blame them for like what happened. I just think it's just kind of an unfortunate reality of having all the chaos of racing.
I think to me it's no different. Like, again, you're taking a gamble, and they took a gamble and they lost it. I mean, it's no different than if you're on an oval on green flags and you pit right before Santino Ferrucci throws it into the wall like Detroit, and all of a sudden you're on the wrong side of the pit window because everyone else already went and you haven't gone in yet. So like staying out is the same example. I mean, they decided to stay out. They knew rain was around, but took the risk. And unfortunately, in this scenario, the risk didn't pay off. But yeah, pretty wild to not only have 2, but 3 drivers with Kip and Simpson as well, running out of fuel mid-race. So yeah, one of the many things it's kind of a fun fact, but the Indy cars don't actually have like a fuel gauge. They just kind of do some crazy math in the back end to see, okay, how much they're burning, what are the engine settings, that sort of stuff. So there's kind of like a guessing game a little bit in terms of, can the car actually like physically make it or not?
Yeah. So anyway, obviously Palou ended up 2 laps down and gave up like 10 points in the standings is whatever. But looking at the actual winning strategy, what was interesting here is that Newgarden actually did an extra stop on top of the rest of the field, whatever, at least the top 4. McLaughlin did 8. So the Penske's were trying to keep those fresh tires moving. And McLaughlin, that was pretty fun to watch him roll up the racetrack. He pitted right at the last yellow on 230, but when Colette blew his engine. But Newgarden came in under yellow with 120, which was the extra stop compared to Ericsson and Rasmussen. And that, I think, just helped them a little bit with tire life in the middle of the race. But honestly, by the time they all pit on 203, they were on the same situation. So it just, just really just came down to pace, and he was able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that too was both Ericsson and Rasmussen had cars that had really good longevity. Both of them, they even mentioned in the post race how their tires were lasting and their aerodynamics were lasting better than the Newgarden or other drivers, so they could stay out longer on a stint. So
in the middle of the race,
yeah. So I think that was part of it too. Was I think both the fact that Newgarden was leading already in the restart, there was no lap traffic, and there wasn't enough time to get the tires fully worn down, are part of the reason that his car looked better than Ericsson's, despite Ericsson having a bigger lead mid-race when the tires are a bit more used up.
Yeah, the weirdest part was when they restarted with about 43 to go, Rasmussen got by Newgarden, but apparently Newgarden didn't realize that Rasmussen was on the lead lap, which I was like, I don't know how that happens. But he obviously, Newgarden kind of, I'm sure he didn't defend it nearly as hard as he would have.
I don't know. He was drag-tailing pretty dang hard to not be defending. Not only that looked eerily similar to the 500, so maybe he wasn't necessarily as aggressive, but he certainly was defending against Rasmussen. And I think that was one of my favorite parts of the race, because you have a guy like Newgarden who's willing to play chicken with a concrete wall to win a race, and Rasmussen, whose frontal lobe isn't fully developed and doesn't understand how physics work. Two guys that are above all will put their car on the line to win. So that was, I think, really fun to see. But to your point, I think after a couple laps, Newgarden's oval prowess had him pull away, and then I think, I'm assuming Rasmussen kind of burned his tires out too much, and that's where he fell back to third and where Ericsson came into play.
Yeah, when Ericsson got passed on track, right, by Newgarden earlier on? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think it might have been a pit cycle thing, because part of it too was when the whole Palou fuel incident, Newgarden immediately went past Palou and went to his pit stall, where a lot of guys like Ericsson stood behind Palou thinking that he was going the right speed.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's no really official ruling.
Yeah,
I think maybe 1 or 2 seconds, but it was one of those where there's no official ruling on that. So I guess if a car is going below pit speed, you can go around him.
Yeah, because coming out of the pits, let me see. Newgarden was coming out, was in the lead when they threw the last yellow, I believe.
Because restart wise, when Newgarden, Ras, and Ericsson.
After those guys all cycled out with the pits who needed a pit. But anyway, Newgarden, just a classic Newgarden day here. 6 of the last 11 they've raced here since they came back. I'm not surprised at all. I was just really hoping for Marcus, someone who I think his won races before, hasn't won on an oval outside of the Indy, but has always shown speed, and unfortunately for him, just not nearly enough pace at the end there, but a commendable effort across the board there. Any other takeaways to look at here, Al?
No, I think you mentioned it. Newgarden is the king of ovals, and the king of this oval particularly. I think he's won 6 of the last 10 or 6 of his 10 attempts. Yeah, that's unbelievable. And I mentioned too on the broadcast, I think part of the reason he's so good at this track is understanding the physics of it. So in these sort of tight, constrained areas, clean air is an asset. One of the reasons that Ras is pretty good is because he is one of the few that's super comfortable in the high line. And the high line is almost guaranteed clean air because no one else wants to hit it unless they have to. And then on top of that, Newgarden does a good job of because there was times where he looked like he was going to catch up to Foster in the back half of the field, but found a way to kind of take these in-between lines where Ericsson could never really get a clean angle. It was either going to be half dirty, half clean on one of the two sides. So I think Newgarden really understands, because with ovals, it's so much more technical in that regard with clean air and angles and tire preservation, whereas a circuit or street course is more focused on braking and those things. And I think that's why and Newgarden's a master at air control, and with Ericsson not be able to get any clean lines, he was just kind of keeping him in a physics swirl of bad air that just couldn't let him build up a speed. So I think it was
of course.
Without traffic, there wasn't any way to do that. And I think Newgarden was just very, very meticulous in how he was running those laps.
Yeah, and the last takeaway, I would say, yeah, of course he's able to manage that distance, but he's just, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, just
He's got
overall,
he's got good cars too. I mean, Penske's setup is great for this kind of track.
yeah, which was so weird because Malukas had a better car, but he literally, and the funniest part is they actually got a chance to interview those guys while they were out of the car, which led to that clip of Palou running away, which was pretty funny because they said they had to get back in the cars on that first red flag. And Malukas was like, yeah, we messed up the setup. You know, it's too late to kind of change those things in race. So disappointing day for him. He was all the way back in seventh, and I think he clearly had pace to win in the right setup. But anyway, yeah, Newgarden, Ericsson, other shout outs. Rinus VK, I mean, we didn't even hardly mention him. That guy was flying around all day, and only Daly has really been able to throw a Juncos car like that around. So it really impressive.
I think it was actually Juncos' best finish too. I think before that it was Daly in 6. So
no, Daly's podiumed when he was the spot driver with them.
It might have been at this track then, particularly.
Yeah, because I remember he podiumed last year at the Milwaukee Mile, or was it 2 years ago? Either way, like to save them in the leader's circle, and it was like that huge save. I think it was 2 years ago, and then he got the full ride last year. Yeah. Okay. But yeah,
I think beyond that.
Yeah, what other shout-outs?
It's going to sound crazy to say, but Ericsson's pit crew. This is one of the first times I've seen an Andretti in a competitive spot and have 3 for 3 or whatever, 6. We had a lot of pit stops during these kind of races. So to knock him out, and there's a couple spots too where he was having like sub 7 pit stops, which are pretty darn good when you're battling against Penske's and Ganassis that are cream of the crop on those sort of crews. Again, it sounds a little bit undermining, but that is one of the key parts in how you build a full strategy and put your car in the position to win a race. So I think that's worth a shout out.
Yeah, I would not shout out Will Power's crew, but I will say that Will Power finally put together a result and a weekend that I think he looked worse at times than he had all season when it comes to qualifying and everything. I mean, he started 21st and was able to finish 8th. It got on those tires late, made a good call, was able to move up the field a lot on that last stop, and just something to write home about, at least with him after such a bad year so far. Outside of that, I mean, nothing too out of the ordinary besides the obvious Palou scenario. So,
and I think, speaking of big movers, I think Ras ended up with the biggest mover of the day,
of course, at
18, which is pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead, let's see. I think Power started 19th, right? Or what's the SP right here? Is this spot on the grid? Oh yeah, no, I was right. 21st. Anyway, the only other shout out we had, of course, was for Miles Rowe in Indy Next. So he's in the 99 car with Able Motorsports, and really weird situation where he accidentally ran an extra lap during qualifying. I guess his spotter must not have communicated effectively enough, or his comms weren't loud enough. And instead of being on pole, he had to start last, which for the first time pretty much ever, we had 24 cars in the Indy Next field, which is pretty exciting, honestly. Cool to see that. And with that came a great race by him, pushing his way all the way to the front and picking up his 3rd win ever and the biggest mover ever to win an Indy Next race. Of course, like I mentioned, not very many people who've come from that far back should have been on pole, and also there's not been very many 24 car fields, so there are some asterisks there, but it's still a commendable performance. And on top of that, that is his 3rd win. I think I mentioned that, all on ovals. So pretty cool for him. I know there's been some murmurs about him maybe getting a spot in Indy, and this kind of gets to one of those things where it's like you wish you could just run him on an ovals only run, like on a Dale coin or something like that, but it doesn't seem like those are going to be very common anymore. But I do know that, like, I remember the Dale coin rule, I believe it was 3 or 4 drivers were the most you could have on a team in a season. So I don't know why that would stop you from doing that, because the leader circle points still only count to the car, not to the driver. So maybe he does get a chance to run an ovals only schedule like Rasmussen ran the opposite, but who's the last ovals only guy?
I mean, most of them have been old, so it would have been like the Elio.
But was there any rookies that did only ovals only? I guess it has.
I think usually the opposite, because to be honest, most guys came from Formula 2 and didn't have much oval experience, or just even I mean, I'm glad to see that we're utilizing this tracker at NXT Ending Next, is because part of the challenge is a lot of these kids don't have a lot of oval experience, because most of the next races are not ovals, which is ironic given IndyCar's key focus on them. But yeah, so I think that's part of it too. It's usually just the non-oval kind of like strategy.
Yeah, let me see. They raced at. They did not race at Phoenix, and obviously they don't do the Freedom 500 anymore.
The 100.
Freedom 100.
It'll take a couple hours
quite
to
a race.
run those cars.
And they're going to be on the Milwaukee Mile, and that's it. So yeah, only 2. I think they used to do Iowa as well. So losing Iowa obviously hurts.
It's kind of swaps for Milwaukee at that point.
Yeah. Anyway, cool story there. He'll be a guy that we're going to be watching in free agency. We're going to get to that next episode. I think we'll have a little bit more information there, because right now the only news is, which you can kind of hop into right now actually, is that Christian Rasmussen has signed a multi-year extension leading to at least 2028. So after all the talk we've had, pretty clear, like we said, there's very few guys in IndyCar that can win a race. I mean, when you look at guys that have actually won a race right now, I mean, it's Newgarden, Ericsson, Rasmussen, McLaughlin, VK, Kirkwood, Power, Lundgaard, Award, Dixon, Rosenquist, and Palou and Rossi, right? What is that? That's 13 guys. So, and how many of those guys have won a race? And Rahal, I guess. So 14. And how many of those guys have won a race in the last 3 years? I mean, that cuts the list about in half, right? I mean, very few guys have had success getting into winner's circle despite all the chaos. And I laugh because IndyCar is like almost the most unpredictable sport ever, because you have the race like you did last night and you're like, all this chaos is going on and everything, and then somehow Joseph Newgarden wins. And it's the same thing that happened at Phoenix this year too, where it's just like, how the hell does he just come out, and there he is, like right through the shit and just right to the front. So anyway, good for him, and I think he's going to continue to improve as he's shown some more pace on the road and street courses. Obviously, ECR cares more about the wins than anything, and I don't think he's necessarily going to be a championship contender ever. So wins is really the thing that I think is going to be his marker as he continues also to show Indy 500 pace.
Yeah, I think wins in keeping himself out of the wall and out of other people. So I think it's similar like a Palou Award sort of career trajectory, where you've got the raw talent, you got the speed, you just kind of have to balance the cojones with some control and strategy. But yeah, I think he's definitely got the pieces there, and he said he's continuing to get faster. It's just controlled speed is that next phase of development.
Yeah, so that moved his podium moved him to 112 points on the year, and takes him actually into the leader circle, out of the bottom 3, past Caio Collet at 112. He is now only 4 points behind Nolan Siegel and 5 behind Romain Grosjean. So another good weekend. He could be building a little bit of a cushion. So that'll continue to be interesting to look at, as the difference between him and Collet is just 13 points.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, and just we're run through the standings here. So on the flip side of that, you've got now Stingray and Mick both tied for last place with 89 points. Again, been a pretty subpar season. You mentioned Collette's 10 ahead of that at 99. So they're still within a tight margin there. And I think Collet, again, with both the 500 and this oval, could very well be a different story. But part of this reason we have a full championship is you got to continue to finish races and continue to finish well. So that kind of covers the bottom half. One of the bright sides with Palou and short ovals is that both of them have been his worst finishes. So that has helped thin the margin, although it's 49. So I wasn't say it's within
he's just over a race. I mean, just over a race lead, because you get 5 points for starting. So
yeah, and all these polls, I'm not sure how many points that's worth for 4 of them or this season.
You get 1 point per poll, so he's going to make up for his 5-point penalty at the Indy 500 if he keeps this up.
Simply by existing with polls. But yeah, and I don't think there was much of a shakeup beyond that in the top 10. Do you know? I haven't looked at it recently, but Kirkwood's obviously still in second, Malukas in third. Lundgaard and we can Yeah,
I
it's been
mean,
covered
yeah,
before.
obviously Newgarden moved up a ton, and what is it? Ray Hall fell out of the top 10. So anyway, looking ahead at some other newsworthy notes, Ryan Hunter-Reay has signed with Arrow McLaren to become its new sporting director. So of course, Ryan Hunter-Reay, 2012 IndyCar Series champ, the only one non-Penske or Ganassi during the reunification era. 2014 Indy 500 winner, was with McLaren this season. I would assume this means he's going to be back in that 31 car next year. Obviously, that's not confirmed by any means, but in this role, this was something similar to what Kanaan started with before he became the team principal, and also something where he's kind of an ambassador as well as, he's kind of a consultant for the team, but also can kind of be more sponsor facing. I think he's just good to have another Indy 500 winner around. They can't get enough of them over there. Trying to get Palou, trying to get Patter to get him, trying to rub off that good juju. But anyway, he also kind of had this role with Ed Carpenter while he was a driver for them when they kicked Daly out of the seat in 2023 mid-season. So nothing that he's unfamiliar with. So interesting to see. Any notes from you, Al?
No, I mean it's news. I mean, it's certainly glad to see him getting more involved in the sport. And yeah, I mean, unless Jimmy Johnson and that crew wants another NASCAR driver out in the fourth seat, it's good to have something shoot up for the future.
Yeah, well, by the way, I know you made fun of his crew, but the Palou and some other crews actually implemented some of the strategy they were using on their pit stop. So they beat Palou in the pit competition. So they kind of made G your words there.
No, it's certainly unusual, but nothing different. I mean, Armstrong's got an NFL offensive lineman as his field changer, so there's always room for more unconventional strategies.
So moving through the news, another big point is kind of a two-pronged issue here, is that Kevin Rocket Blanche retired as IndyCar's officiating technical director, as well as Nick Allen taking over, and some more clarity on a new penalty system. So first off, Rocket Blanche, as he's known, has been someone that's been around IndyCar through thick and thin, 36 years and 555 straight races. Pretty absurd stat, and someone obviously that is ingrained in the IndyCar world, and I'm sure will continue to be involved in some small capacity and be good kid counsel for this next crew. But this feels like the changing of the guard. It's almost like a new principal comes in, and with the new independent officiating, I'm sure there's going to be a slight change in how we see stuff carried, and obviously consistency is the thing that most teams want. But with Nick Allen taking over last week, we didn't really get to see him call any penalties besides the no call on Palou. So I don't exactly know how, I'm guessing they're the last line of defense on deciding yes or no on a penalty, but either way, interesting to see. And on top of that, so this guy, Nick Allen, was the Andretti Global IndyCar chief mechanic, and actually just took over, as an assistant for Blanche just about this season. So this is only his first half season with them. So he's definitely pretty green, but I'm sure they'll get him integrated pretty well. And he's been around the paddock for a long time. But
yeah, I mean, it comes at an interesting time as well, because officiating has, for better or for worse, been a hot topic the last 3 races prior to Gateway, with the GP kind of withdrawing that yellow too long and changing the rules to be less subjective. The 500, you had a lot of yes, no's with the rain. And of course you had Detroit with a lot of contact and no calls there. So interesting timing, but I think, yeah, to your point, with the independent officiating and I think additional scrutiny on that as a governing body, it probably was worthwhile to get a fresh perspective on how things set up. And I agree with you. Will likely be future changes broadly overall with IndyCar officiating.
Yeah, trying to ref Detroit would make me want to quit too.
It's ugly out there. It is truly ugly, but that's part of street racing. So
yeah, anyway, just looking into the new penalty system, they came out for post-race reports. So they created a 3-level infraction. So level 1 is a non-compliant single-dimensional having to do with height or size measurements outside of tolerance, typically from wear or damage, or assembly failure. So this is what happened to Palou. And this is, I'm guessing this is how they kind of were developing it. And this is how they came up to the decision to only give him a 5-point penalty and a $10,000 fine. At the next level, level 2, is more a more significant compliance failure due to an out of tolerance aerodynamic angle, driver or car weight, fuel system or safety equipment matter. So I remember there was some issues with people tampering with the hybrid at some point. Or maybe that's just a rule I saw. And I know for sure last year when Ferrucci had the podium at Detroit, he was underweight. Even though this car was at the right weight, there was something to do with his ballast weight based on how much he weighed. Like the driver itself with the ballast has to weigh like 180, and it was like 175 or something. So I think that is what like an example of a level 2 would be. Whereas a level 3 is actually tampering with a spec part. So that's what we saw at the Indy 500 this year, with the 2 drivers having to move to the back, Collette and Harvey, because they used a screw that was not a spec part. So kind of pretty clear there, and I think gives a lot more clarity going forward as to what to expect. Hopefully no more as they continue to kind of strike down on these issues. Hopefully less and less of these post-race reports that really throw off the weekend for different drivers.
No, I agree. I think to your point, it's good to like have some transparency, because it does feel like officiating for a long time has kind of been this black box and has felt subjective. But to have some clear examples and rules ties it to life. I think it's an improvement, but it is tough because there's so much nuance into this. I think the example you brought up with infection level 3 and the non-compliant bolts, like by the rule it is, but from an overall advantage standpoint, it wasn't necessarily material. Most of the crews and other folks that were interviewed kind of stated it as more like incompetence than overall like malpractice or anything. But it's tough because you gotta draw a line somewhere, and sometimes it just kind of doesn't. It's not really targeting the right thing, but it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and at the bottom here you can see that it says associated penalties begin with point assessments and fines at level 1 and rise to disqualifications and suspensions at level 3. But as you saw, the push to pass scandal last year, that led to suspensions, right? Whereas the issues with the spec part was disqualifications, but it wasn't suspensions or disqualifications from the race itself, just moving you to the back. So there's clearly already some nuance built into that. This is just kind of making it so you have a ceiling and a floor. It's like a minimum 7 years with parole and a maximum, we're going to chase the maximum sentence. So I think it gives them a little bit more clarity on the different punishments they can have. So leading into the Road America preview here. So of course the XPEL Road America, XPEL Grand Prix of Road America is going to be Sunday, June 21st at 2 p.m. on Fox. A race that we attended last year for Alan's bachelor party, and I think we've come to love. It's definitely a track that has some fun racing, very wide open, a lot of speed, especially in the kink where you go over 200 miles per hour at one point. And really, really interesting track. You get some different strategies, but the more unique part about it is that it's over 4 miles long. So the pit, going an extra lap is a very big commitment, and you can make out some really, if you can pull off a fuel save, you can pull out some pretty crazy overcuts and do some cool things. So pretty cool track on top of that. So what else do you have to say, Al?
Yeah, I mean, it's America's national park of speed. So it is unique in the sense that it is basically built into a forest. So it's very remote compared to most tracks, even like the 500 that is within an urban area. I think on top of that, like as a spectator, it was really fun because if you were there for the full weekend and had the time to explore, it really felt like going to like 6 different tracks, depending on what turn you were at, both the topography, the general atmosphere, the stands, and how it was set up. It was really cool to see like what all they've done to maximize every bit of the space. And it was definitely like difficult to find your bearings at first, but after looking at that, once we got to Sunday, I got a pretty good idea of where we were sitting and stuff, and ended up finding our preferred spot around turn 12. So highly recommend if you haven't gone to it. It's a super unique track. Again, just for the pure scale, and then the general like aesthetics of it being in more of like a foresty natural environment.
Yeah, so last year, obviously, Alex Palou won in his beautiful red Solo Cup car, which I believe will come back this year, just assuming either this or Mid-Ohio, seeing that they've still been involved on the team with the car. After 2 straight weeks of the Honda car, I'm sure they're going to change it up some. So that'll be cool to see. And obviously, we had some great liveries this weekend as well with the heater mobile, heater wagon, whatever you want to call it, with McLaughlin. So some more fun liveries coming this year for sure. But yeah, just looking at last year's race, Palou kind of just took it to the guys. I mean, nothing much to be said. I don't remember. Yeah, he started in second. And I just remember, Louis Foster started on pole, and that was the big surprise. He fell all the way to 11th. This was like pretty impressive performance then regardless. But it was at Dixon and Rossi were both on big fuel saves, and they almost made it to the end, but they had to pit with, let me see how many laps left. Dixon,
because Dixon pit early laps.
When who do you call? It was what's his name? Wrecked early on.
Schwartzman.
Yeah. Schwartzman
he just
wrecked
didn't brake
right in front of us.
He just went right into the gravel.
Yeah, and ruined his day, and that put some guys like Rossi and Dixon on a fuel save strategy. But yeah, Dixon had a pit on lap 4, so really close to making it. But like I said, that 4 miles, he wasn't going to quite make it. Once those guys left, Palou just took it.
Yeah, I think one little tidbit too. So Connor Daly didn't fully wreck out, but missed the turn, I think, in the 5-6 where he goes up, downhill, and back uphill. And as part of that, when he was in the gravel, the city crew tied a tow link to his rear to get him back out of it. When he was free, he didn't realize the tow link wasn't removed and decided to do an entire lap. Again, once you get going, it's 4 miles. So he just did a victory lap with his tow link flapping around behind his car, and it was pretty amusing to watch. And obviously got a penalty for it because, again, it's not very safe to have that thing flopping around. But
it's not safe to release before all the AMR safety team is out of the way. But yeah, that was a highlight of the day for sure. And then all the guys running out of fuel, including Ferrucci, and then Ferrucci shotgunning a beer in turn 1.
I noticed that was Ford America. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, Ferrucci obviously had a good couple weeks here and at Detroit last year. But yeah, so pretty fun track. And yeah, the fuel saving is definitely an interesting factor here. And then also, like with Daly, what's so interesting too is if you go off course or you have to be restarted or you spin out, a yellow comes out at some point. It takes them 2 minutes to get around this thing, if not longer. So if you're like off track, like you have so much time to get them going. So like they have to change the penalty structure with like stop and holds and all these things where, you get a drive-through penalty at Gateway, you go down a lap. To go down a lap at Road America is very difficult. So it's another thing to keep in mind. But regardless, I'm kind of getting into the nitty-gritty too much. Let's get into what we think will happen this year. So looking at strategy, it's been pretty simple. I mean, last year, Palou ran 3 black stints where everyone else was mostly primes. So I'm guessing it'll be more of a prime race again, seeing that this is pretty much the same, hybrid, all the same things we're used to seeing without any, it's not really a 2 and 3 stop race because of just the length of it and everything that comes with that. So I don't really see much to say. It's just going to be a classic 3-stop IndyCar race.
Yeah, and most of the stints too are pretty well lengthy. I mean, you mentioned last year, like Dixon had a pit at 54, which is very end of the race. So it becomes a factor for sure. Beyond that, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be. I'm curious too because I think a lot of this has been with the tire compounds continuing to be kind of innovated. There's been a lot of like day of changes. Remember, I think it was Detroit where Palou and Monza were kind of talking live, like, what do you want to finish on? What do you want to go on? What do you want to do next? So I think there is some dynamics to that, but typically the field will kind of follow the same general blueprints in terms of at least minimally finding the 2 reds and 2 blacks, but also what tire is best to finish on.
Yeah, so just looking at, maybe our winner prediction, this course was actually a pretty heavy Penske course until last year, where Power won in 24, and then Newgarden has actually won here 3 times. So, or is it 3 times? Maybe 2 times. Either way, it's been a course that they've had a lot of success on. And Rosenqvist, his only other win outside of the Indy 500 is here as well. So looking at Palou, has won here 3 times. You know who the obvious pick is, but we're going to give you a little bit more nuance into that. So yeah, last year, of course, Rosenqvist finished second, Ferrucci third, Kirkwood, Armstrong, Simpson, Malukas, Siegel, Dixon, VK. So pretty standard. And then the average finish since 2021 for the teams, Ganassi, of course, in 1 with an average finish of 7.33, Andretti in 2 with an 8.8, Penske with a 9.47, Meyer-Shank with a 13.3, and then McLaren with a 14.3. So with all of that in mind, who is your favorite this week?
It's a great question. I think if I'm picking with my heart, I would love to see Kirkwood pull it away here. I think they've really improved their overall structure. From a setup perspective, Kirkwood's had a pretty consistent season so far, finishing up high. And then really, like, Andretti's had a lot of opportunities in this track to win, but I've been struck both. But
only Rossi has won here since 2016.
But I've been struck with some boogeymen, like missed pit opportunities for like Colton Herta, just bad strategy, or getting caught like playing bumper cars. So I think it could be an opportunity for Andretti to sneak this one away with a win.
Well, yeah. Remember with Herta a few years ago where they kept him out 1 lap too long and completely ruined his day. Yeah. Was it 2024?
I think they'd even like
they've had winning cars. So. They've had winning level cars here since then. So I totally understand that pick. I think that's pretty clearly a guy that can win here. If I had to go someone else, like I mean, Malukas has actually been pretty strong here, and he's in a car that has had success. He finished 7th last year with AJ Foyt. Sure, I don't know. I can't go with Malukas again. That guy loves to lose. So maybe if I go with someone else, I'll go with his teammate Will Power. Someone who has won here before in 2024. That was probably his 3rd to last win in a year that the Penske's absolutely dominated in a car of very similar caliber now with Andretti. Coming off a good week, I see him finally put stuff together and get a win on the board.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider the guy that took your job a teammate, but nonetheless, yes.
No, I was talking about your pick with Kirkwood. That's what I was referencing.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say, because Malukas and Power wouldn't say they're friends nor teammates. They're just the changing of the guard. But okay.
What about your underdog?
Good question. Why not Rosenqvist? I mean, it sounds weird, but again, let's not forget that Meyer-Shank and this team hasn't really won much else because like these crazy 500 wins. But I mean, he had great speed last year, so I could see it being a more sleeper kind of pick.
Lundgaard has.
I'm also more curious, like what livery he's going to pull out of this season, because it seems like every race has been something new and colorful. So that's been kind of fun.
I'll go with McLaughlin for my underdog. He was the guy that almost won here back in 2024 when they were all on the podium, and he's continued to show pace here. Last year he was 12th, but he qualified 4th. I think he's been chasing a win for quite a while. I'm trying to think. I mean, he won a race last year. No, actually, I don't think he did. Maybe he won in Iowa?
I feel like he did win a race. I don't remember what it was. But
he maybe won an oval last year. But anyway, I think he's the kind of guy that has shown pace on these courses and has kind of gone under the radar the last few weeks. I see. Yeah, I like that pick. So I'll go with McLaughlin as my underdog and Power is my favorite. And then who do you got, Al?
Then I had Rosenqvist, the stretch goal. Who wasn't it?
You picked Kirkwood.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, and I got Kirkwood for my favorite and Rosenqvist for my long shot, or the underdog.
All right. Well, with that, we are looking forward to the XPEL Grand Prix of Road America here in a couple weeks. And after that, we're headed to our July 4th race at Mid-Ohio, really getting to the dog days of the season. And Really excited for continued great IndyCar racing, and appreciate you guys sticking around with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Looking, by the way, Milwaukee 2024 was McLaughlin's last win. So we'll see if he finds some pace. With that, I am Jake Langdon.
And I'm Alan Langdon.
And we'll catch you soon, race fans.